The Bahamas has faced several impacts over the past few years, namely the unprecedented Hurricane Dorian of 2019. What have been some key lessons learned as it relates to building resilience in the Bahamas?
So going through what the Bahamas went through with Hurricane Dorian, I think brought out a lot of lessons for us to revisit as a country and as it relates to disaster management and preparedness. I think namely the ability to be proactive with preventative measures, looking at things from a comprehensive approach in terms of interagency coordination and collaboration, and then developing mechanisms that have or help us to have sustainable funding. I think those were key, and we see it emanating through our legislation, which was recently passed, where the government sought to bring all of these factors in under the roof of the new authority, the Disaster Risk Management Authority, to better manage how we mitigate, prevent disasters going forward.
Tell me a bit more about the legislation that has been implemented and how it will contribute to CDM in the future.
So it's one of the most critical pieces of legislation in our history as it relates to disaster management. It's extremely comprehensive. The legislative mandate is very wide. It ranges from comprehensive disaster financing management all the way down to how we manage NGOs, which was something that was not in previous legislation. It created the new authority, which is the Disaster Risk Management Authority, and I'm happy to announce that we have been operational since July of this year. So still in our infancy stages, but we're working through the transition process from the former predecessors, which is NEMA and the Disaster Reconstruction Authority. So the legislation was enacted in December of 2022, operationalized in July of this year, and we've hit the ground running in terms of building some of those legislative mandates that we have. So we are now mandated to create national disaster risk plans, public body plans, establish an NGO council, develop for the first time in our country's history, two financial funds that manage prevention, preventative efforts, and also post-disaster efforts. And so these are the things that we are looking to utilize, these new tools to help us to manage disasters going forward.
The CDM audit is a key activity implemented by the BRICS program funded by the European Union. How has this process been beneficial to the Bahamas?
And again, having being the newest NDC on the block, I think it's critical based on the historical accounts that I've received from my predecessors. The audit tool was key in identifying some of these challenges that we are faced with. As you know, the audit tool is a monitoring and evaluation tool, and it helped us to identify key areas of weaknesses and deficiencies so that we can strengthen. So namely, I think one of the biggest challenges that we had in Hurricane Dorian was recovery. And that is something that we're working in our new, now refined and redeveloped CWP plan that we're currently developing, placing a key emphasis on how we recover, putting in place the regulations and what the government will do to provide assistance to allow citizens of the Bahamas to recover quickly.
How is the country advancing with integrating the blueprint into its strategies?
So the CWP, we are in full gear. We just recently had 2 exercises with the support of the University of the West Indies, their disaster risk management team led by Dr. Ivan Springer, along with CDEMA. And so we are now very advanced in a stage as we have had a foundational document that we had to utilize, which came from our predecessors. And so by January, first quarter of 2025, we should have our first draft of our 3 to 6 year CWP plan, which will guide how the Disaster Risk Management Authority functions over the next 3 to 6 years.
In September 2024, the BRICS program facilitated the high-frequency radio training and upgrade, which was actually the last upgrade to these radios since 2005-2006 in the CDEMA participating states. How has this equipment since been integrated into the operations of the Disaster Management Authority?
So as it relates to the most recent training exercise and donation of equipment from the BRICS program, I think from an aspirational focus, it sets the tone for what the DRM Authority will do, which is to roll out comprehensive communication strategies throughout our family island. Throughout our family islands. As you know, the Bahamas is an archipelagic nation made up of a number of inhabited islands, which communication is always a challenge. And so us having now the ability to communicate even at low frequency with CDEMA and Barbados now expands our efforts to have additional resources for us to be able to communicate with administrators as far as Inagua. And again, disaster management is all about having a number of redundancies in place that allows us to be proactive and be able to respond quickly and effectively. And so giving our disaster managers the ability to always have communication with central government, which would be us, during times of disaster is critical. We saw during some of the smaller disturbances this year where we lost communication. And so the goal is now, we have the base station set up. We're going to roll throughout all of those family island communities to ensure that their stations, their radio stations are up and running, and so that we'll be able to incorporate continued testing. When the authority also moves to its new headquarters, we are developing a radio base station room, which will allow us to communicate with all facets of the disaster management process, whether that's with our law enforcement, whether that's with administrators, etc. This will allow us to communicate effectively.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure having this conversation with you.